Joining us for analysis is Jonathan Schanzer. He is the Vice President of Research at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, and he joins us from Washington. Thank you, sir, for your time. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So did Iran's supreme leader enter into this deal to reset relations with the West, or was it about the promise of more than $100 billion in sanctions relief?
Well, it's clear from the Supreme Leader's remarks over the weekend that he certainly does not see the United States or the West as potential allies or bedfellows. He essentially slammed the West and insisted that this was not any kind of a détente that would take place as a result of this deal. The major inducement, I think, for the Iranians was the promise of $100 billion that has been locked up in escrow accounts overseas. But probably even more important than that is Iran's access to a banking system that would allow it to move money from one bank to another all around the world, and that's known as SWIFT, or the Society of Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunications.
So how could regaining access to SWIFT lead to Iran funding terrorist networks?
Well, it's going to make it incredibly easy for Iran to move money anywhere it wants, anywhere around the world. Right now, the way that sanctions have been structured, Iran was kicked off of this system, or many of its banks, its major banks were kicked off of the system, making it extremely hard for the Iranians to move money. As we understand it, even though sanctions relief was flowing to the Iranians for the last year and a half, they've not been able to move that money because of the strictures on the SWIFT system.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has called this a very bad idea. How worried should Israel be that Iran can still acquire a nuclear bomb?
Well, look, first of all, this deal is paving the path for an Iranian nuclear weapon, but probably not for 10 years. The deal will sunset after 10 years, and it's at that point that Iran will have a nuclear program that will have been blessed by the P5+1 by the United States. And so there will be very little standing in the way of Iran to get that weapon. In the meantime, the Israelis are going to be concerned that the Iranians could be cheating. But I think more importantly right now what they're worried about is the fact that this $100 billion is going to be flowing to terrorist groups like Hezbollah, Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and other groups that Iran has been sponsoring over the years. They're about to get a heck of a lot richer.
With Iran, with the sanctions being released now, what does the West get out of this?
Well, the West gets I suppose the West gets a diplomatic victory. They get to tell themselves anyway that we're not going to have conflict with Iran over its nuclear program, at least for the next 8 or 10 years. I think largely this is about the President of the United States getting a foreign policy victory. There have been very, very few of them. And of course, the Europeans, I mean, I think their goal all along the way was to get back into the Iranian market because there's a huge amount of money to be made there. And of course, to defer conflict as much as that's humanly possible.
All right. Jonathan Schanzer of the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies joining us from Washington. A pleasure. Thanks very much for this.
My pleasure.